Welcome back. I welcome you back to the body temple. We are looking at object. All right, thank you. Welcome back. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also and the work that are therein shall be burned up, seeing then that all elements, all these things, but the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also and the work that are therein shall be burned up, seeing then that all elements, all these things, also and the work that are therein shall be burned up, seeing then that all elements, all these things. So as we continue to talk about matter, I've had to switch my microphones here so that there is no interference and I'm not hearing my voice echoing. Shall be burned up, see then that all elements, these things. I don't know. So as we continue to talk about matter, I've had to. I don't know if we finally get it right with the mics here, but anyhow, the focus is talking about the relationship between our body, our health, and the environment. So that's why we want to talk about this matter, which is made of composed elements, which include chemical substances that cannot be broken down into the simplest substances by ordinary chemical means. Therefore, elements are substances in which all these atoms are similar and have the same frequency. There's about 106 elements listed in the periodic table of elements, which is normally covered in the subject of chemistry. Those 106 elements, they have specific components and specific characteristics. The body is made of 84 of these elements and are built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Jesus Christ himself being the chief cornerstone, in whom all the buildings, filthy framed together, groweth unto a holy temple in the Lord, in whom ye also are builded together for an habitation of God through the Spirit. That's Ephesians 2, verses 20 to 22. 4 of these elements, which are in the body, account for 96% of the body weight. And these include oxygen, which is 65%, carbon, which is 18%, hydrogen, 10%, and nitrogen, 3%. So we are talking here about the elements which are found in the human body. And there's 84 different elements. And the major elements which make 96% of the body weight are oxygen, which is 65%, carbon, which is 18%, hydrogen, which is 10%, nitrogen, which is 3%. The rest includes elements like calcium, potassium, sulfur, sodium, magnesium, and all around 1% or less is composed of these other elements. So each element is composed of its own chemical distinct kind of atom. An atom is one of the smallest units of an element that retains its chemical characteristics of that element. So atoms are so small that if you filled a child's balloon with hydrogen, it would contain about 1 million or billion hydrogen atoms. Profound. A drop of water contains more than 100 billion hydrogen and oxygen atoms. If an atom was as large as the head of a pin, all atoms in 1 grain of sand would fill a cube measuring 1 mile high. That is profound. Why is this significant? Because in order to understand our health, the relationship our bodies have with the environment and disease processes, and God's plan of abundant health or living life abundantly, we need to go to the basic understanding of matter, elements, and atoms. So going back to the atoms, an atom is not solid bit of matter. In fact, even atoms of the densest substance consist mostly of space. Everything in the universe has basically the same pattern. As planets in our galaxy orbits around the sun, like nucleus of an atom, like the planets have small particles orbiting around it. In other words, these elements or these atoms have dynamic components, meaning it's not static. So life, therefore, is not dead. Living has a lot of components of movement. That's why here at Dynamic Lifestyle Institute, we focus on dynamic elements and components of life. So in order to really, truly understand the health message and understand the relationship between the health message and country living, we need to go to the basic understanding on the matter, elements, and atoms, because life is in movement and living components of the earth as well as of our body. So therefore, if atoms are not solid bits of matter, they have an element of space and movement, which has a certain pattern, just like as planets in our galaxy orbit around the sun. Likewise, the nucleus of an atom, like the planets, has small particles orbiting around it. Think of the nucleus, the middle of an atom is the sun, and the planets, the small particles, electrons circulating around the nucleus is the planets. Relative to the different size of electrons, which are also part of the planets, as you can visualize the galaxy being full of activity. So each electron, which of course these electrons we know they're charged, each electron travels in its own circle called a shell. 7 of these shells are known to exist. Each shell can hold only a certain number of electrons. There are never more than 2 electrons in the shell that is nearest to the nucleus. So every human being has basically the same structure, that this structure is arranged differently though. Some people are shorter, some people are taller, some people are stout, some people are stocky, some people are slender, some people are dark, some people are light, etc. We identify each one by how we look or how we sound. We identify atoms by the number and the weight. The number of identification is the number of protons in a nucleus. The weight is determined by how many neutrons are in a nucleus. For instance, the hydrogen atom is the only one without a neutron in the nucleus. So you must be thinking, oh, therefore, there is some significance in that 10% of our body is hydrogen. Yes, and we'll be covering this in our future as we cover more content on the body temple. When 2 or more of these elements are joined, they form a compound. Some examples of these are potassium chloride, which is known very well, ammonium chloride, water, which is, hydrogen and oxygen. So therefore, we are understanding now that when you put 2 elements together, you get a compound. So for instance, the water molecule is called hydrogen oxide because it carries 2 hydrogen atoms joined with an oxygen atom to make a water molecule. So matter is constantly charging, and by so doing, emits small amounts of energy that is measured by positive and negative emission. That is significant. So it's important, therefore, to realize that the same way we can talk about matter, we'll be looking at how the body has these tiny, tiny little cells. And at this cellular level, there is life. Not only is there life, there is a nucleus, there is a membrane. So when we start talking about cells in the next series, you'll be able to understand the significance of knowing what we just shared. So I like what Dr. Duane and Nancy McEndree wrote in the book of Body Temple. They elaborated on this whole idea of having compounds being made of 2 different elements. So they looked at the word kinds, which is mentioned in the first chapter of the book of Genesis. Each kind, planet or animal, has a unique frequency. Food also have frequency. We'll learn later how a knowledge of these individual frequencies will enable you to know the proper diet necessary to bring plant or animals back into perfect health. Frequency has to do with how the various elements are stacked together in any substance. For the frequency, we obtain from this frequency, we obtain the energy needed to live. Aha! Therefore, the energy needed to live is obtained from the frequency which is found in different elements. So, John 5, verse 57 reads, "As the living Father has sent me, and I live by the Father, so he that eateth me, even he shall live by me." John 6, verse 57. So, before we conclude this topic on matter, elements, and atoms, it's evident that in the economy of the human body, there are two forms of energy. One called reserve energy, and the other is called usable energy. Reserve energy is compared to your savings bank account. It tells you how much accumulated life force there is actually to use. The usable energy is compared to a checking account. That is the energy which is used to fuel the body throughout the day. So we know that we do not live off the food we eat, but instead of the energy from the food we eat. And any day that anyone does not take in more energy than they use up, that is the first day of illness. So, therefore, our understanding of this topic of matter, elements, and atoms will lead us to a better understanding on how to nourish the body so that the body can have life, so that we don't die before we are dead. So we live and thrive based on the nature of who we are. So remember, in our previous segment, we talked about how knowing who we are has to do with the anatomy of our body, meaning what is inside my body is who I am, which is a foundation of understanding the health message. And then once I know who I am or what I am based on what's inside me, then I need to understand how I function, which is the physiology of the body, how the different body parts function. So today we've talked about a very important aspect of living, which is the matter, the elements, and the atoms. And from this section, we've gathered understanding that energy is what produces life, and that the human being has two forms of energy: the reserve energy, which and the usable energy. The reserve energy is like your savings accounts. It tells you how much you've accumulated over the years, which is available for use. The usable energy is your checking account, is the energy that is used throughout the day. So therefore, let's conclude by saying matter, elements, and atoms help us better to understand that we do not live off the food we eat, but instead of the energy from the food we eat. And any day that passes by and the person does not take in more energy and they end up using up energy stored, that is the beginning of the disease processes. Thank you for joining me as we reviewed the topic matter, elements, and atom. Please join me in the next segment as we are going to look at protons, electrons, ions, and cations. So for today, We went into some geography, if you can see, about the galaxies, some science fiction about the protons moving around, and we also talked about the biology of the body. So, understanding diseases, therefore, means that we need to all reach a point where we can put these things in the words which make sense to us. Thank you, Dr. Duane and Nancy McEndree, for the body temple, for you have given other people an opportunity to better understand what we need to know in terms of how body functions are related to our environment, the food we eat, and how we can thrive to prevent diseases as well as early death by feeding the body with the right energy the cells need to live. So join me in the next segment when we are going to talk about protons, electrons, ions, and cations. We'll be doing a review of some of the chemistry which some people did many, many years ago. Thank you for joining me. This is Dr. Stella Nemuseso.